This lesson is absolute value equations. The goal is to solve and graph equations involving absolute value. What you should understand by the end of this lesson is that an absolute value quantity is non-negative. And since opposites have the same absolute values, an absolute value equation can have two solutions. All right, if you remember, an absolute value of a real number is written like this, and it is the distance from 0 on the number line. So if you had the absolute value of 4, when you count, 4 is 4 spaces away from 0. Start here at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, -4 is also 4 spaces from 0. We don't count negative. We can start at 0 and we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, absolute value is always a non-negative value or a positive value. If you notice, even though this is positive, this is negative, the answer is always positive. And if this was 4, the symbol is, if x is greater than or equal to 0, the absolute value equals negative x if x is less than 0. So, an absolute value equation has a variable within the absolute value sign. For example, the absolute value of x equals 5. So we could write that two ways. The absolute value of x could be 5, or it could be -5 because they both equal 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5, and the absolute value of -5 is also 5. That's why our absolute value equations will have two solutions. All right, here's how you work an absolute value equation. You do all of the work in the equation until all you have left is the absolute value and it equals a number. Then you rewrite that without the absolute value symbol and have them equal a positive and a negative answer. Then you're going to solve both equations. The solution are your two solutions. Let's take a look and see how that works. All right, here is our first problem. We're supposed to solve for t and graph the solution. So it says 5 equals t, the absolute value of t minus 1. So I have nothing there except a number, the number 5, and the absolute value. So I have rewritten the absolute value without the absolute value symbols. I've rewritten it with a positive 5 and a -5. And now I'm going to solve the problem. So all I do here is add 1 to both sides. I end up with t equals 6. I add 1 over here. I get t equals -4. If I put these numbers back into the original absolute value, I would have 6 minus 1 is 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. If I use -4, I would have -4 minus 1 is -5, and the absolute value of -5 is also 5. So now all I have to do is plot the points on the graph. So t equals 6. I put a point there, and t equals -4. And I put a point there. And that's all you need to do. Here's your first practice problem. The absolute value of s plus 2 equals 1. Practice 2. 4 equals the absolute value of u minus 1. All right, here's the next problem. It says the absolute value of u minus 450 minus 8 equals 42. Well, if you notice, I have this minus 8. So I need to get rid of it before I rewrite the problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 8 to both sides. That eliminates the 8 over here. And 42 plus 8 is 50. So now I'm ready to rewrite the problem. And I'm just going to rewrite the absolute value without the symbols. So I have u minus 450 equals 50, and u minus 450 equals negative 50. I'm going to add 450 to both sides of the equation. That will give me u equals 500. And if I add 450 to this one, u equals 450 minus 50 is 400. So I end up with u equals 500 and u equals 400. Now all we have left to do is graph those 2 points. So I come up here and I put a point on 500 and one on 400. And now I've solved the equation and graphed the solution. Here's your practice 3. The absolute value of d plus 75 plus 5 equals 20. Practice 4. 25 equals 5 times the absolute value of w minus 60. Be careful, we're multiplying by 5 here, not adding it. So you're not going to subtract this. The opposite of multiply is divide. Here's one that has more than a couple steps. The problem says 7 minus 3 times the absolute value of 2d minus 6 equals 1. So we're going to, before we do anything, we are going to subtract this 7 from both sides. Alright, so when I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, this one's gone, and I'm left with negative 3 times the absolute value of 2d minus 6 equals 1 take away 7 is negative 6. The next thing I need to do is divide both sides by negative 3. That's gone, and negative 6 divided by negative 3 is a positive 2. Now I'm left with nothing more than the absolute value and a number, so I'm going to write that down. I have 2d minus 6 equals 2, and 2d minus 6 equals negative 2. And I'm just going to solve them for d. I add 6. This is gone. 2d equals 8. Divide by 2. d equals 4. On this equation, again, I add 6. I get 2d. This time I have negative 2 plus 6, which is positive 4. And when I divide by 2, I get d equals 2. Now you can plug those right into the original equation and do 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 6 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. So that side's right. On this side, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 7 minus 6 is also 1. So those are the right numbers. So I'm going to come back up here and plot these numbers on the points, or the points on the line. So D is 4, and D is also 2. Practice 5. The absolute value of 20 minus 2p equals 60. And the last one, 6 minus 6 times the absolute value of q plus 250 equals negative 894. All right, remember, you should be doing the practice problems as you're watching the video. Also, if you don't understand anything, go back and watch the parts of the video that you didn't understand. You're going to go do your lesson on IXL. Remember, you should get a 90 or above. Be sure to mark on your goal sheet where you are on your scale of understanding. Are you a beginning, learning, understanding, or are you an expert? And that, students, is the end.